today.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning, this afternoon, wherever you're at. I'm Brandon Schulte. I'm the VP of Marketing Technology Services here at Zirous. And I'm joined here today by Georgia Porter, who's our MarTech lead and certified Marketo architect, as well as Reagan Gordon, who is our run sales for us and as our relationship manager with all customers that are Adobe specific. So we're here today to talk about marketing attribution, which I know is a unique topic for many of us. I know it's one of those things that vexes marketers time and time again as you're trying to understand where to spend the right resources and budget to ultimately produce the type of demand that you're trying to do. So we're going to go through a few different things with regard to the platform. But before I do that, Georgia and Reagan, did you want to say hi, and we'll jump into it?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Georgia, and we'll be really getting into Marketo today to show you all of those advanced pieces.
Hi, everybody. I'm Reagan, excited to sit along here today.
Perfect. So jumping into the agenda in terms of what we'll do, we're going to kind of talk through all the analytics pieces associated with Marketo. So we're going to really focus on some more of the advanced analytics. So we're not going to go into a whole lot of detail on the actual like Marketo analytics reports that you see for like the email performance report or the email link performance report or things like that. We're really going to focus on a few of the, kind of the next level products that come along with Marketo or that you can upgrade to as part of your subscription. So we're going to focus on Performance Insights, which is Marketo's built-in attribution tool. George is going to run through how that works and what that does in order to show attribution, both first touch and some multi-touch attribution as well. We're also going to go through the lifecycle modeler. So I know a lot of the folks that have worked with us in the past have lifecycle models engaged in their business. So we're going to kind of go what that is, how to use it, how to make sure you're sending the right message to the right customer at the right stage of the journey. So we'll go into that. And then I'm going to cover some information on Marketo Measure, which was formerly called Visible, which is another product in the Adobe suite that's kind of a best-in-class marketing attribution tool for those of you that need really sophisticated attribution in order to manage your different workflows and businesses. So that's the agenda for today. As always, don't hesitate to reach out to us via chat. We'll try to answer questions as we go along. The chat button in Google Meet is at the bottom corner. It's the one right next to the 26 people that are here right now. That's a little notepad. So feel free to add questions there, and we will jump into that later. And then we'll also try to answer questions as we go along as well, and at the end also. So with that, we'll jump into why analytics matter. As marketers, I think analytics, as I alluded to earlier, are one of the most vexing things that we see. It's very difficult to quantify, especially in B2B, as well as omni-channel motions, just how much credit things are getting and being able to understand the value of each touch point that you have with the customer and what that ultimately means in terms of the value when you're trying to look at that ROI between marketing dollars spent or effort expended versus the revenue that's returned. So here's a few stats that we see on a regular basis. I thought they definitely highlighted some of the problems that are in the space, which I'm sure are no new news to anyone on this call. And just a kind of a funny cartoon about a lot of times marketing is a vibe-based thing. So we're trying to do everything we can within Marketo to show you how you can put numbers to it to prove the value of the marketing team to what you guys are doing in day in and day out. So with that, I will turn it over to Georgia, and we will let her jump into Performance Insights.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, so getting into Performance Insights, most customers have this included now in your Marketo package. But when you're on your Marketo dashboard, if you don't see that little speedometer, the little Performance Insights app, just reach out to your Adobe CSM and we can make sure you get that upgrade or get that included. So, right, first off, how do you get there? When you're on that dashboard, you'll have that app. You can also get to Performance Insights if you go to your Analytics tab, and then it will be a little bubble on your Analytics tab, which we'll show today too. And when you get into Performance Insights, the first thing you'll see is this view of your channels and your programs. So your channels are something that's set up in your admin section as you start doing your Marketo implementation. There's some standard channels out of the box, webinar, trade show, email send, newsletter. You have the ability to add custom channels as well, which you can kind of see on this screenshot. So in this example, they've expanded out their email channel into sponsored emails versus batch customer emails. And then when you're within this dashboard, you can drill down by channel. So as we start an implementation, that's one of the first things we talk about is how do you want to report on these emails that you're sending or these programs that you're running? How do you want to compare them against each other? So the channel lets you click into webinar, and then you'll be able to see on the right-hand side all of your webinar programs compared to each other. So getting a little deeper into that, this is a larger view of that left-hand side. So on your left-hand side, you're going to see all of your programs into this pie chart, and then the breakdown of total members by channel. So in this example, their content syndication channel has a larger number of programs and a larger number of members in those programs. Same thing with website. This is actually pretty common, right? If you have form fills out on your website and you're driving a lot of traffic to your site, that's one of the easiest entry points rather than some of the outbound messaging or event recruiting that you can do. So if we click into one of these channels, then we'll see the programs on that right-hand side of the dashboard. So here you can see their different sales outbound programs and the success metrics. So how many successes, where sales outbound has roughly 14 success people within there.
And Georgia, just to confirm, success people are defined as people that are net new into your pipeline. So they'd be new prospects, correct?
Yes, there is a little separation there. We'll definitely get into the differences there. So your acquisition program people, those are your new names. And then the records that have a program status that is successful, they get separated into success. So the easy example there is if you're hosting a webinar, right, you have 1,000 people invited. So you have 1,000 people as a member of your webinar program. And then they go through, they are invited, they're registered. If they attend, that's a success. So you might have 500 people attend your webinar. So 50% are successful in that program. Where new names is more how many new people filled out the registration form to the webinar that heard about our webinar from LinkedIn that weren't even in our database yet. Okay, that's a good clarification. So then there's also a trend line. So at the top of your performance insights, you can switch from contribution, which was the screen we were just showing with all of the different bar charts, to a trend line. This is a little easier to see over time. So here you can see it's showing the past year and how their programs have functioned. This particular graph really drops off to zero. Usually you wouldn't see that, right? If you're consistently marketing, it would stay up here. Maybe this was, like a university or something in this example where it drops off maybe during the summer months. Okay, so now we're going to actually get into Marketo and show you a little bit more. As Brandon was referencing, right, what is the difference between the metrics that you can see and how do you even get performance insights to work? So I'm going to switch my screen up a little bit here and go like this. And bump this a little to the right just to keep me on track. Okay, so sometimes if you click on Performance Insights, you're going to get a message that pops up with a little note like this. And it's going to tell you there might not be enough data here to pull all of the reports that we need to pull. And so if you're getting notes like this, that's where some of these steps can come in handy because there's kind of 3 or 4 things you have to do in order to get data into Performance Insights. And so we're going to go into that before we dive into each of these different tabs. So the first piece is the program setup. So if I go to marketing activities and I go into our demo folder down here, when you're building your programs, right, your purple email programs, those blue event programs, in order to get those programs to show up in Performance Insights, you have to add a period cost in the program setup. And this is a small step that's often overlooked, right, if you get in the groove of sending your monthly newsletter. So you can just drag in the period cost into the setup here and select a month. So I already have a period cost for this one, and I can edit what this is. So if this is my April newsletter, then obviously the program month is April, and then you would set your period cost here. What you choose for the period cost is usually an interesting conversation. For newsletters, it's a little bit harder to quantify. But if you're hosting an event, right, if you're going to a trade show, you might want to enter what was the cost to secure the booth, right? What was the cost of the materials, the advertising materials that you printed to, promote your booth at the event. So some of those hard costs is usually what you would put into your program period cost. And so here we have $100. If you have a program that runs longer, right, it's more than just a one-time batch send, like a gated content form. So if I go down to this brown default program here and I click on the setup of this program, we have multiple period costs pulled in here because our gated content form is out on our website, we're pushing traffic to it, and it's happening over a series of months. So if we want it to have reporting over those months, we have to add the period cost in here. So you can see that's not always initially apparent that you can have multiple period costs, but you can keep dragging things in, right? So if I wanted to add July here, I could say, all right, we're going to spend another $100 in July. Maybe we have some advertising costs there. And so now we have 4. Once you have a period cost, click through over here. The next key important piece is acquisition program. So as Brandon brought up earlier, the difference between new names and successes. So your acquisition program is a field on your person record, and it gets filled with the first program that acquires the record's interest. So as an example here, if we look at my fill out form Logic Smart campaign, let's say somebody fills out that gated content form on our website. We are going to say in our flow step here of this smart campaign, first, program status goes to web request, filled out form, right? So I'm on my web request channel. My brown program here, this gated content form, is on the web request channel. So the success step is filled out form. And then my second step here, if the acquisition program is empty, give the credit to the gated content form. So it gets the credit for the acquisition program. We also use some system tokens to set the acquisition date too. That's helpful in Performance Insights, right? We need to know if Brandon filled out this gated content form, what date did he fill it out, and what date should we give the credit to the gated content form. So acquisition program is important. If you're not doing this today, the good thing is sometimes Marketo does this for you a majority of the time. So if you have a Marketo form on a Marketo landing page that's underneath a program, it's automatically setting the acquisition program for you. And that happens sometimes with email programs as well. So this is just another way to guarantee that that metric is getting stamped. Because if you embed a Marketo form to your website, it's not going to stamp the acquisition program. So this is a way that we guarantee that, yep, we put this form out on our website and we're giving the credit to this program. And then after acquisition program, the next thing is that program success. So when they fill out the gated content form, we're using that change program status flow step action here to say, for our gated content form program, set the status to filled out form. I'm also going to build a different scenario for you just so you can see this all the way through. So if we go back to the April newsletter, normally when you're under your newsletter, right, your purple email programs, you just have your email asset. You just have that creative that you're sending out with it. It's also important if you want to mark the success of the program to have a little smart campaign that does that for you. And the cool thing about Marketo that sometimes is a little confusing though, is you get to define what your success is. So the easiest option we usually say is, if you're sending out your April newsletter, a success is probably if someone clicks on a link, let me do this again, email, clicks link in email, that's what I want. If someone clicks on your CTA link in that newsletter, then that's your success. So I would select my email here that I have under my purple email program, and then I could say specifically where the link equals my CTA link that we're driving traffic towards. And then in the flow step, we would say change the program status for April newsletter to influence. So here's a different example, right? Back in gated content form, we were showing the web request channel, and the success for the web request channel is filled out form. But here for the newsletter channel, the success step is influenced. So we would say influenced. And then you would activate this smart campaign before you sent your April newsletter out so that anyone that clicks on your CTA link gets marked as success. We've had clients that choose all sorts of different things as a trigger here, right? It could be anyone that opens or clicks. It could be anyone that clicks and then also fills out a form on a page that you're driving them to. So you get to define what the success of that newsletter is. Okay, and one of the last things here is opportunity contact roles. So in order for Marketo to even see that an opportunity exists in Salesforce or Dynamics, right, you have to have that contact as a contact role in your CRM. And that's how it will come over into the database. So I'll bring this up a little bigger again so you can see. This is a screenshot of, I added one of our teammates here to a contact role in our Salesforce. So that's what it would look like on your opportunity in Salesforce. And then on the Marketo record, you'd see the activity come through. So Caitlin was added to the opportunity, and now it's actually on her record, and we'll see the revenue credit for this opportunity come through in Performance Insights. So if you want that full scope of new names, program successes, how are programs influencing revenue, creating pipeline, you have to attach your contact roles to the opportunities. That got really small. Let me drag that back in here.
Well, one note, so obviously Dynamics and Salesforce have the native integrations to pull that through. If you have like a middleware, like a Vertify, you can do that as well. You just have to specify that in the movement to bring the contact role over into the opportunity so it gets attached as well. So if you don't have one of those CRM systems, there is a way to do it as well, just to let people know that.
Yep, that's a perfect call out. Because we get a lot of questions about that too. If you have Marketo standing alone and have a middleware, we've set that up so that your Performance Insights works as well. Okay, so when you get in the application, a lot of times you'll see different metrics that you can filter on. So the first one here, when I'm in the engagement tab, is the difference between successes and new names. And then when I'm on the pipeline tab, a lot of times you'll see the difference between first touch on your opportunity or multi-touch. So first touch is paired with that acquisition program. So if Brandon's acquisition program was my April newsletter, then the April newsletter gets a portion of the credit for the opportunity that eventually goes close one. But multi-touch would be, okay, Brandon came in through the April newsletter. Then 2 months after that, he fills out our gated content form. So that's multi-touch because he had a success in the form fill along the way. And then eventually the opportunity is created or maybe close one after that. So diving deeper into the engagement tab, we have our channels listed here. And right now we're looking at successes. So if I drill in and click on webinar, you'll see on the right-hand side, my programs are going to change. And then we see here's my April, May, and June webinars compared against each other. So doing pretty steady across the board with webinars. I can also click on a handful of channels. So I could also add newsletter to this, or I could then deselect webinar again and just look at the newsletters, right? So here's April, June, May, all of them together. If I bring them all back, now we can look at this for new names instead. So bringing in a steady amount, we set this up kind of as a demo. So there are equal numbers here by design, but usually you'd see a little bit more variety here where certain programs stand out against each other. Now down below, you see the percentages and the cost per new name. This is a huge metric that a lot of teams are trying to hit. And understand, right? If I'm paying a lot of money to an ad agency, right, or if I'm paying a lot of money for a specific trade show, what was the cost per each new name that I gained? So you can expand these channels and see your programs compared against each other. So each of my newsletters got 13 new names. And so the cost per name was about $7. And usually you want to see your costs be pretty low. Like we usually see people with like $1 or something like that, but it depends on what program you're running, right? If it's a huge trade show, it might be relatively expensive, and you want to try and increase the number of new names there. Let's flip this back to success. And you can do the same thing. So down here, the chart changes a little bit, right? So now I'm seeing the number of successes, and we can expand and look at the webinars. And then you'll get the cost per success as well. And now that number will be probably a little bit higher. It just depends on how many successes that you see. Okay. We'll flip to pipeline. Let me click through over here. Okay. So in pipeline, this is more about how many opportunities were created and then how much revenue was created as a potential pipeline. So here you can see that the newsletters, right, have generated about 8.3 opportunities. And it's coming out to about 40 grand. And then you can see how much of that is still open after some time. And the slide here on the right shows you kind of the difference in some of these breakdowns. So it's a little confusing when we start getting into 8.31, right? Why is it not 8 programs or 9 opportunities? So the credit is going to get split. There's a little algorithm at play for how much credit goes to the first touch versus how much goes to the multi-touch and how does it split it out. And we're going to go through some of those examples this afternoon as well. So if we flip to revenue, which is our last one here, this is where we see some more of those terms come into play. So opportunities one is the portion of credit the program received for influencing the one opportunity. And here we do have some full numbers, but you might see some of those different decimals as well. And then revenue one is the portion of credit in more of like your monetary value of what the program received for influencing that opportunity that's won. And cost, right, is your total cost. So here you're seeing $100 that I had input for the April newsletter, $100 for June, $100 for May, and that's why we get that 300 total cost. Okay, we got some chats, and I think some of these chats might relate to the examples. So let me look real quick here. Anna's asking, is the attribution going to split evenly on multi-touch, or will a predictive model determine the percentage? So that's a big question. Some's going to go to the first touch along with those multi-touch ones in the middle. Brandon, do you have anything to add there on like the model?
Yeah, so there are a couple examples. I know she's showing one here, but essentially it looks at the timeline. So it looks at when the opportunity was created, and then what the different touch points are if you're doing multi-touch. All things being equal with performance insights, if you have 4 touch points and the revenue is $10,000, it's going to split it equally between all 4 of those touch points. However, if one came like after the opportunity was created, it's not going to give you credit for that. So this is kind of the examples it shows, like, okay, this was pre, this was post. There's a few different ones, and that's how it comes to it. But they're split equally. When we get into Marketo Measure or Visible, you can change that to say, hey, I want certain things weighted differently. But with Performance Insights, it's all based on the total number of touch points and what the revenue is that qualify.
Yep, exactly. So diving into this one a little bit, the example here is saying that Fred is acquired by the trade show, right? So that happens April 11th. And then they throw Margot in here. She has a success with the webinar, but only Fred is associated to the opportunity that's created for $3,000. So in this scenario at the bottom, the trade show gets the full credit for the $3,000 of the pipeline created. Nothing has went close one yet, so there's no values here at the bottom. So Margot was never really associated with anything on the opportunity, so the webinar is not getting any credit. And the second example, we're just going to get a little fancier as we go here. Now we have Bill and Joan. One's acquired by a trade show, one is acquired by the webinar. So opportunities created gets 1 and 1 here. And then Bill and Joan are associated with roles to both opportunities. So pipeline created also kind of gets split here. So the 8,000. And they've got a little explanation for us kind of in the Adobe documentation, right? So it goes 8,000 is half of the 16,000 available. So we had 6,001, 10,000 another, that's 16,000. So it's splitting because there's 2 people, 2 opportunities, split it right in half, 8,000. But then only opportunity 1 gets closed 1. So revenue 1 was the $6,000, but then again, that gets split in half. So $3,000 of revenue 1 to both the trade show and the webinar. And that's where you can see we start to get those decimal values where there was only 1 opportunity that closed 1, but there's 2 programs. So they got half the credit, and that's where you get that 0.5. And we have one more example. So in this one, Steve downloads some content. He has the success, and then an opportunity is created for 3,000 with both Steve and Jason having opportunity roles on that. And then eventually that opportunity closes. The tricky part here is Jason attends the webinar after the opportunity is created. So the webinar gets 0 credit for the creation of the opportunity or the pipeline, but eventually Jason was still attached to this as a role when it closes, so the revenue 1 and the opportunity 1 does get split there. Any questions on those 3 big examples? I know these are like advanced level. They're on the Marketo Architect exam, actually. So there's a lot of questions about attribution, and it's kind of fun to like learn through and understand how Marketo splits it out. Brandon, are there any questions in the chat that we could answer kind of at this point before we get into Lifecycle Modeler?
Yeah, I've been answering. So I know there's one question about for channels that don't really have a cost. So like your newsletter might be that. You can put 0 as the question, but there is a way within the the admin section to basically say for this channel, show the touch points, but you don't need a cost for it. With that said, you're not going to see the ROI like she was showing on the last page just because you can't divide by 0. Normally tell customers to track variable costs, so like ad spends, the cost of an event or trade show, that type of thing. Not necessarily like employee costs or, the cost of your software subscription or something like that. There is a question about how are ops flowing from CRM to Marketo. So that's the opportunity contact role. So that's a standard object within Salesforce that integrates with Marketo. Same thing with Dynamics. Like most CRMs are going to have a version of a contact role. So it's incumbent upon your salespeople saying who is being influenced by that opportunity or who is at the table when it comes to like the buying group, because that ultimately allows Marketo to see that this person's involved. So I'm going to take any activities or touch points that they've done to figure out for attribution. So if your sales team doesn't do that, you're going to miss that. I see a lot of customers will set that as a required field when an opportunity has value that you have to put at least one person in there. But yes, that is incumbent upon your salespeople to do that. We get into Marketo Measure. There's a way to do it by account and not require people to do that. So that is an advantage of that platform.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to keep moving so Brandon has some time to get to Marketo Measure. So another helpful piece that can help you monitor and report on the life cycle of your leads and your records in your system is that revenue cycle model. So this lives under your analytics tab in Marketo. And I've just got a little simple example here of a standard success path, right? Your person becomes known, they're new, maybe they become a lead, then they become marketing qualified or a sales lead, right? They've been sales accepted, and then hopefully eventually attached to a new opportunity via those contact roles, and then the opportunity goes close won. So that's your standard success path. And I'm going to flip into Marketo and show you how we typically edit this. So if I go back here, I'm going to go to my analytics tab. And on the left-hand side of your analytics tab, you should see some Marketo examples. These should be in every Marketo instance. Usually, if you're starting from scratch, what I recommend is clicking on that success with detours, and then go ahead and clone that model. So we can say this is our demo test model. And then I'm going to go ahead and edit the draft, and that's going to open a new window for us here. And I'm just going to go full screen so these boxes are big enough for everybody to see. So this is a good example of success with detours, right? So we've got that known record, becoming engaged, marketing qualified as a person, sales accepted person, getting attached to an opportunity, and then opportunity goes close won. We all know it's not always rainbows like that. So this is a great example with the detours. So if the salesperson gets a hold of them, right, and they're not quite a good fit, they can disqualify them. Or not every opportunity is going to be a win, so you have a loss bucket as well. And the recycling bucket is kind of cool because you can go in and out of the recycling bucket. So maybe they become marketing qualified, and then you've got someone reviewing those contact us form fills or reviewing those MQLs that come through, and maybe your marketer says, hey, this isn't quite right, maybe this is a spam fill or something. They can put it in recycling or an inactive or disqualified bucket as well. When you're working within this modeler, it's a little tricky at first, but you can rename any of these stages. So maybe instead of engaged, I want this to say MEL, and that will update for us. And maybe instead of person, I want it to say MQL. And then in between, you have all of these purple transition arrows. So if you click on an arrow, you'll get a preview of what it says down here. And then you'd hit transition actions and edit the transition. and it'll take you to basically like a smart campaign within this model. So each one of those purple arrows is essentially like a triggered smart campaign, where you can trigger at what point do our people move from known to MEL. In this example, it's whenever they click an email, whenever they fill out a form, or whenever they visit a web page. Sometimes this can get a little complex, and a lot of times we will build a lifecycle program in marketing activities. So something that moves your records through the statuses based on a lead scoring model. And then what you can do, instead of having a lot of stuff nested within these purple arrows, is just do a change data value for your status field. So if our person's status changes to MEL, right? So here's our pick list coming through from what we have set up in Salesforce. If our status changes to MEL, then they've moved from known to MEL. You could even put a previous value constraint on there where the previous value is new and they're moving from new to MEL. That way you can keep all the other like cool scoring logic and status movements in a program that's a little bit easier to get into, and you spend less time touching this model and adjusting it. So we'll have all of these purple arrows be status changes. So where the status changes from MEL to MQL, from MQL to SAL, and then to opportunity and eventually to customer. And so that's really all that happens within the model. You can drag things around. You can create additional arrows if you'd like, right? I can drag in different places. I can put some skips or some different detours in place where we're dragging. I can also create new buckets. If you have more stages than this, we could make one that's called inactive. We could put this up here. We could make a little arrow to it. So you have the ability to customize this all out. It's a good visual to see where are your records living, and then you can validate the model at the end. Let's see what happens if I press validate. Yep. So it might give you some errors where, hey, your rules aren't quite right. You need to go look and validate that your rules are correct in order to approve the model. And the last thing I'll say before I hand it to Brandon is once you approve the model, there's an additional upgrade where some people have another report here called Success Path Analyzer, or the Opportunity Influence Analyzer. So the Success Path Analyzer will show you the time in stage between this funnel, and then like how many people are currently in MQL, how many people have moved in the past week, and you can drill down into those specifics, which we can send some kind of documentation on those pieces. But that's a window into the model. Brandon, did I miss anything on that?
No, I think that was great. The other thing we see people do, so obviously you guys are all marketers, so from a content perspective, you're generally going to see different communications go to people that are different stages of their journey. So the real value of this is A, to see where people are at, but B, to ultimately be able to say, hey, I know somebody's in the the SAL stage, so maybe I want to take them out of current marketing campaigns because they're already working with a salesperson, or maybe someone's in the MEL stage and we're trying to qualify them, so maybe I'm sending them more like educational content versus somebody who's like in the opportunity stage. Maybe I'm sending like why my product's better than my competitor's product. So think of all the programs that you run in terms of like your engagement programs and things like that. Leveraging this can help you make sure that you're getting the right person, the right content at the right time.
Yeah, that's a great call out. We've even seen people make segmentations off their status field where you have dynamic content within the same email. It's just a slightly different message or a different engagement program with different streams. So lots of potential there for sure.
All right, great. Well, I'll let you click as we go through, Georgia, but thank you for your help and thank you for the great presentation there. So Marketo Measure, formerly named Visible, is probably the best marketing attribution product that I've seen on the market. So it basically allows you to take, best in class email engagement platform like Marketo, combine it with a best in class platform like a Salesforce Dynamics, and then be able to ultimately see an attribution model to understand what's driving revenue, so you can do more of what you want to do, and to create success, and less than maybe what isn't working as well. So with Marketo Measure, as long as you, there are 3 tiers of Marketo Measure. Tier 2 and 3 allow you to do a custom model, in addition to the 5 models that they have out of the box as well. So the key value with Marketo Measure, I mentioned this earlier, is with Performance Insights, you need to have your salespeople mark that ultimately somebody is related to the opportunity in order to get credit and see their touch points. With Marketo Measure, you still can do that. So you can always use that as an option. And I see that a lot of times when you have maybe multiple salespeople selling into a company. So say you're selling into like a company like Coca-Cola. You might have different divisions within your company selling products and services to different people within a big company like Coca-Cola. So you may still want to use the attribution model where it's based on contact role. So you can make sure you're giving credit to people that are actually due to get credit, and not everybody. The other thing that you really see, and what I would say all but a handful of customers that I've worked with on Marketo Measure have done, is they use the account-based model, which essentially it says anybody at that account. So as you can see in this example, there are 4 or 5 different folks that are doing different steps along the journey. Because they're at that account, if they do any of those touches, they're going to get credit for it. So by default, Marketo Measure has 4 touch points that you'll see. So that's anonymous first touch. So that's the first time somebody interacted with your brand before they even filled out a form. It's going to start tracking your data using JavaScript to be able to say, hey, this person, in this case, read a blog post. So they know that this lady had done that. And then ultimately, when she fills out a form, it just like you see in Marketo, the person becomes known, then her first anonymous touch will go back. You'll also be able to see a lead creation touch. So what is the activity that created the lead creation? There's the opportunity creation. What is the activity that happened immediately prior to the opportunity creation? Gets credit for that. And then there's the deal revenue, or the close one touch. In addition to this, so this is a client with tier 2 visible or above. They've added 2 custom stages. You get up to 6 for an MQL stage, as well as a demo stage. And then if you see at the bottom, that's where you're able to model that credit in that custom stage based on what you're doing. So they're giving 26% of the total value of the opportunity to the first touch, 22% to lead creation, 20% to MQL, 10% to opportunity creation, 7 and 5% as well. You can ultimately associate that revenue based on your goals. The reason that it's more top of funnel that you see here than bottom of funnel is because a lot of times the marketing team doesn't have a whole lot of impact on what salespeople do once the lead is in an MQL stage. So we certainly can work with you guys to do this. In addition, Marketo Measure is going to offer an AI model that basically looks at all your data and all your close-on opportunities to make suggestions of what your percentages should be for all the stages that you have. I did see a question popped in, so let me answer that before we go to the next slide. You can actually look at both. So you can do an account-based model, or you can do a contact role-based model, just like you did with Marketo Performance Insights that George just showed. So you can choose either one. I would say most of my customers do the account-based model, just because that way you're not requiring salespeople to do anything. So if they're at that account and they had a touch point, they're going to get credit for that touch point. And then the way the touch point is situated is it's the touch point that happens right before the stage changes. So that's the one that's get credit for it. And then you can have a catch-all stage that basically says all the other touch points that weren't one of those, in this case, 6 major stages, can get credit to. So say you had maybe 10 other stages, you put 10% for all other touch points. Each one of those stages would get 1% of that deal value. So $100,000 opportunity, each one of those would get $1,000 worth of credit for it. But you're looking at, in this example, the anonymous first touch would be 26,000, lead generation would be 22,000, and it's whatever that preceding activity was to when it changed. All right, if we want to go to the next slide. So how Visible collects data, it does it in a couple different ways. So there's all your digital marketing activities that are captured by online touch points. So there is a server side piece of JavaScript that you put on your site, and you ultimately have to put a DNS entry to make sure that you've given Marketo Measure permission to be able to capture that information. And that's how you track all the online touch points when people come to your site. When they fill, they're kind of tracked as anonymous users. When they fill out a form, that's when they become known. And then all their subsequent web activity will be tracked as a touch point then on forward. So you can see that with any of the main channels. So like email, you're going to send an email, you're going to have a link back to a page. It's going to take you back to the site. Paid search, paid social, you're going to, have the ad takes you to a site. Somebody's going to fill out a form. A/B testing, organic search, organic social, all those are going to be digital marketing activities. Then you're going to have offline activities. So these are activities that cannot be tracked by a form fill. So it could be like when somebody attends an event. They may sign up for an event on the registration page, but they actually attend to the event, and it's a campaign in Salesforce. Things like content syndication, gifts, those would all be things that you would see offline activities. And then the third thing that Marketo Measure brings in that's really cool is you're able to use salespeople activities to be able to do it. So it looks at the lead and task object, or the task and event objects, and you can create rules. So if like the salesperson had like a demo, or maybe they did a dinner with somebody, or whatnot with a client, you can count those as touch points as well. So it takes all that data and it normalizes that into a visible touch point for all the different activities with a visible person that spans the lead and contact object, because you guys all know that people start as leads and they move to contacts in most cases. So it's able to span those as you do that. If you want to go to the next slide, Georgia, I wanted to show really quickly the different pieces that you do as part of this process. So there's the JavaScript setup. There's the integration with Salesforce or Dynamics, or you can do it now if you have this Adobe CDP, that works as well. If you have real-time CDP, you can do that as well. You do integrations with the various ad platforms. So there's API connectors for your Googles, your Bings, your LinkedIn, your Facebooks, some of the like chat platforms, A/B testing platforms, integrations with things like Marketo to be able to bring in email type of activity as well. We're also, as part of this process, you're going to configure it. So basically you're going to say, okay, when certain activities happen, you're going to create rules. So there's a rule spreadsheet you do for both online and offline activities that basically say, if I see a UTM value equals this, it's going to go in this channel or the sub channel. So channel being like paid search, a sub channel being maybe it's Bing or Yahoo or Google. So you're able to track that based on the different UTM values or the API connections that you have for each of your channels. So you end up building out a long set of rules. So sometimes it's 30 or 40 rules. Sometimes it's 80, 90, 100 rules, but we can build those out for each of the stages to be able to make sure that as people are doing activity, it's ultimately categorized appropriately. And then once you have that all set, we'll work with companies on their attribution strategy that we showed, like those different percentages, and then ultimately setting up those reports. And the reports can be done both in Visible Discover, as well as, which is the Visible reporting engine within the Visible platform, or you can do all the reporting in your CRM tool like Salesforce or Dynamics as well. I know there's a question here about, can you look at other custom tracking parameters? So it looks at UTM parameters. You can also do it by page if you want to, or if it's an offline channel, it's looking at the Salesforce campaign or the Marketo program, and you can basically look at those status changes to be able to bring those in. So yeah, there are other ways to bring content in. So if you have a specific use case, we certainly can talk through that, but it's more than just UTM values. Well, that might be predominantly for the online version. There are other ways to track data as well. All right, if you want to go to the next one, Georgia. So I want to show some examples of a few reports, but before I do that, I did want to talk a little bit about the taxonomy within Salesforce and Dynamics. So essentially there are 5 objects that are installed as part of the managed package in order to allow Marketo measure to function. So there is a visible touch point. So all the different touch points that you do. There's also a visible attribution touch point object, which anything that has a dollar value and opportunity associated with it, it's good. That's how you're going to tie the revenue to the touch point. So I can see, hey, this person viewed a Google ad, came to my site, and now there's an opportunity for $100,000. So I need to equate that touch point to a revenue amount. There's going to be a visible person object that's going to, again, associate between lead and contact. So it shows people as they matriculate through their status journeys with you guys in CRM. There's also a visible event object. That's where you're bringing the sales point, the salespeople touch points. So event and task object, where you're bringing that information in. And then there's also an A/B testing one as well, if you want to get down to that level of granularity. But here's an example of a visible report in Salesforce. So each one of these reports in the dashboard are separate, where we're building out different things. So we're looking at, how many leads were created, how many were marketing influence versus how many were marketing driven. Looking at, percent of activities, the cost of activities. So essentially within Salesforce, you can create a bunch of reports. It comes out of the box with Salesforce and Dynamics of about 20 reports to start. And then you can customize from there using the native functionality within those platforms to filter for different rules, and then also use the report visualization. So it's the pie chart or the line chart or all that good stuff there as you do that. So you're able to, again, create those as dashboards, so you can show like maybe a marketing performance dashboard, something like that, to people that want to see things at a high level. If you want to go to the next one, Georgia, we're going to show a few reports here before we finish up. This is an example of current opportunities created by channel by week. So if you look at each one of the different colors as a channel, it's looking at what is the dollar value of the opportunities created, and I looked at it by week. So you're able to see the revenue that the marketing team is producing by week. For the next one, we're going to look at the number. So in this case, I'm looking at my paid search campaigns. How many net new people have I brought into the funnel? So it's kind of similar to Performance Insights, but I'm looking at this by ad campaign. So rather than program, it's coming directly via the API. So I'm seeing all my Google campaigns that I have, and I'm able to see how many people are that first touch are being qualified to my site based on the activity or the campaign. For the next one, and this one, I'm looking at opportunities by channel by revenue. As you see, you can see it graphically, but you can also dive into the record using the detail function. So you can be able to see what was the touch point, who is the person, what opportunity was it, what account were they at, and then in the middle you see touch point positions. So you can see the activity might be one touch point, or it might be multiple touch points, because maybe the deal progressed and we're only a scant few touches on it. But you can see, hey, this is both the MEL and MQL, and it's the first touch or something like that. So being able to show that. For the next one, here's an example of the lead creation touch. So what are the activities that I'm ultimately creating MQLs that I'm sending over to my sales team? And I can see it by channel. So what was the channel that ultimately pushed them over the edge that we said, hey, we're ready to create a lead for this customer? For the next one, here's an example of which a lot of customers really like, being able to see the type of content that's driving value. So in this case, I have my top 10 landing pages for first touch, and how many records were achieved by that. I'm looking at how many were in top 10 landing pages for lead creation for that touch point, and then what were my top 10 landing pages by revenue. I'm also can look at my top blogs for first touch and lead creation, and then revenue as well. So I'm able to even get down to that asset level, like, hey, this white paper is driving a lot of demand, which is pretty cool. All right, for the next one, I'll try to spend, I've got 2 more slides, I think, left, and then I'll try to spend some time on answering the questions here in the chat. This is an example of a visible report within Discover, or Marketo measure report within Discover. So this essentially is showing, the total revenue by channel. It's giving how many deals, our cost per deal, our ROI. This is all predicated on that we're inputting the costs. There's a few ways you can input costs. You can bring in costs via the API connectors, like what you spend on Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. Or you can put costs in based on the Salesforce or Dynamics campaign. You can bring it that way. And then there's a third way if you can't capture it either of those two ways, where you can load it via spreadsheet. So just kind of like we did for Performance Insights, where we're able to say, okay, this channel costs this amount this month, and load that in, and then it'll ultimately get you your costs as well. For the next one, I believe this is kind of a spend versus return dashboard. So in this case, I think I was looking at just paid search only. So I'm looking at the total revenue that is associated based on my touch points for paid search, what my total spend was, and then what my return was. And I can see it month over month, my spend versus return. So kind of being able to see on a quick dashboard, how much value is AdWords giving to us. All right, next slide. That should be it. I'll try to answer really quick the questions. So can we go back in time to do a year-over-year report out of this data in Salesforce? Yes, you certainly can. So you can, all the different ways you cut the data based on your fiscal year, past time period, all the reporting functionality and filters that are available in Salesforce, visible use. And it's basically looking at those visible objects and the related entities in Salesforce, because obviously you're seeing like opportunities and contacts and leads and different things like that. But yes, you can do reporting. You can go back in time. The only limitation you have is when you start with Marketo Measure New, you're going to have like day 0 is going to be when you start those online touch points. So it's not going to give you the touch points prior to that, but it's going to give you all those touch points there going forward online. With events, you can go back as long as you have campaigns in there. So normally I tell people it's about the length of their sales cycle, where your online and offline data kind of tend to map over. It's not exactly there, but it's pretty good. So if your deal cycle is like 3 to 6 months, normally it's 3 to 6 months after the JavaScript's placed on your site that it gets a level of equilibrium where it's all set. But yes, you can report back as long as you have the data being captured. And then, yes, you can definitely go back. So within the person record and within the account record, there's a visualization where you can see all the touch points by that person, as well as on the account record, you can see all the touch points by different people on that account. So you can get down to that level of a person or the account as well. Any other questions before we let you guys go? I know we have like a minute or two left. All right. Well, if nothing else, we really appreciate the time. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to George and myself. We will send the recording out afterwards. I see the question there. It may take a day or two because we got to get it down, and then we got to have our marketing team put it on YouTube. But we will definitely share the link out with everybody that attended here. So really appreciate the time. You guys have a good rest of the afternoon, and we will hopefully talk to you guys all soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.